Did you ever have a situation when the team doesn't trust one of its members? This episode will discuss first why it happens, what the impact it has on team performance, and what you can do about it, all the way to the dreaded decision of removing this member from the team. But I'm going to give you several other alternatives before it gets to that. Welcome to The Trust Show. I'm Yoram Solomon, your host, the author of the Book of Trust, and facilitator of the Trust Habits Workshop. My mission is simple. I want to help you form habits that build your trustworthiness, because the answer to this question will have the biggest impact on your personal and professional success or failure. Can I trust you? Let's start with why this person is on the team to start with. And maybe the question is, why did you put them on the team? One of the main reasons is typically that that person may have a very unique technical competence or technical skill that very few people have. And if you remove that person from the team or did not put them on the team, you would be missing a very specific skill, a very specific competence, a very specific role on that team that you would not be able to fulfill otherwise. So that would be one reason. The other is you just had a vacancy and you just had to take someone. You know, right now in August of 2022, we're still in the Great Resignation, where we have a lot more vacancies than people willing to work. And you just needed to fill that vacancy and, you're going to put whoever you can. Maybe there is a deadline and you just had to put somebody on the team right now. Doesn't matter if the team likes them or don't like them, but you have to put them. Maybe that person has been on the team for a while. You already know that the team doesn't trust them. You already know how they affect team dynamics, but you can't fire them. And there could be many reasons why you can't fire them or why you won't fire them. One of them could be that you're afraid of litigation, and there are other reasons that I'll talk about later when I talk about maybe needing to make that decision and remove, maybe not fire someone from the company, but at least remove them from that team to put them in another role in the company. And finally, there is the devil that you know. You know, we get used to even bad things. And it's amazing, and you see that a lot in cases of domestic abuse, where spouses or kids, they stay in a very harmful environment because that's the only environment that they know. It's the devil that you know, and you sometimes stick with the devil you know, or prefer the devil you know over, I don't know if I would call it an angel that you don't know. Knowledge and feeling comfortable with what you know is very important. And we're afraid of uncertainty of someone we don't know. So those are probably the reasons. And maybe you can come up with other reasons of why you even have this person on the team to start with. How bad can it be to have, one bad apple on a team? How bad can it really be? I mean, it's just one of several people, and maybe the others are very trustworthy. How bad can it be? Well, I want to read to you a paragraph from the Book of Trust, and it's really only in the 3rd edition and beyond in the future. And it's about the bad apple phenomenon. The bad apple phenomenon was studied quite extensively. Will Phelps, an associate professor in the School of Management at the University of New South Wales, conducted a study of decision-making in groups. And by the way, in the Book of Trust, in that paragraph, you can find the link to the original study. In his experiment, students were divided into groups of 4 and were given a task to complete. As motivation, the teams were promised a $100 award per person for the winning team. In some of the teams, an actor was embedded without their knowledge. The actors demonstrated one of three behaviors: depressive pessimist, who constantly complains about the nature of the task, doubting the team's ability to win; the jerk, who overly criticizes team members' ideas; and the slacker, who demonstrated an "I don't care" attitude. Phelps found that teams that had any of those actors performed 30 to 40% worse, but also that the other team members, instead of ignoring that bad apple, they began to adopt his behavior. The experiment found that the worst team member is the best predictor of how any team performs, no matter how creative or productive the other team members were. Did you hear that last sentence, that last statement? Let me repeat that. What they found in the experiment, what Phelps found in the experiment is, and these are his words, the worst team member is the best predictor of how any team performs. So that member, even though it's only one of many, will drag the entire team down. And that's called the bad apple phenomenon. I want to add some of my own survey findings and the correlation with team member behavior. What I found was that in high trust environments, teams are 71% more likely or more willing to hold what I call a constructive disagreement. Team dynamics were one of the top two factors that I found when I did my doctoral study on team creativity and productivity. So team creativity and productivity depends on the team dynamics and their ability to hold constructive disagreement. To explain what I mean by constructive disagreement is where you can argue, where you can debate, you can passionately disagree, but still at the end you're all trying to reach the same the better outcome for the overall team. You are really still focused on the outcome, on the goals, on the objectives, and not on attacking each other or anything like that. The other type, so there are two other types, and I like to look at the relationship between disagreement or conflict and I'll call it both creativity and productivity and probably other features of a team. Think of it as an upside down U-shaped curve. Okay, in the middle, the optimal, the top of that hill, of that upside down U, is your ability to hold constructive disagreement. And that has the biggest positive impact on team creativity and productivity. If you keep going to the right, that's when the level of conflict goes up. And when I say goes up, what I really mean is that instead of being professional, it becomes personal. Instead of being passionate, it becomes emotional. So now you're having personal attacks. Now we're going after a zero-sum game and not a win-win. It's not when everybody contributes their perspective. It's in order for me to win, you must lose. And everything becomes a personal attack. Everything becomes emotional. Everything becomes irrational. And obviously the level of creativity and productivity and other good things goes dramatically down. There's the other side, and this is a very low level of conflict, very low level of disagreement. This is what I call the politically correct disagreement. This is where instead of saying what you really think or feel, what you say is what you think the other person wants to hear, and you try to avoid as much as you can. Avoid that kind of disagreement or disagreement altogether. So I call it the politically correct disagreement. And this is when you have the meeting before the meeting after the meeting, just not the meeting during the meeting. Because during the meeting, you try to avoid as much conflict as possible. You're afraid of that conflict. And you'll see why in a second. I actually already kind of told you why. Because there is no trust. And so what I found was that When I asked in one of my surveys about people's willingness to hold conflict or disagreement, and I gave them 5 options, and 3 of them were, I don't think that disagreements are productive. I'm trying to avoid them altogether. I don't feel comfortable disagreeing. When you have low trust, people chose these 3 options 10 times more, 61% of the time compared to only 6% of the time in low trust environments compared to high trust environments. And as you can imagine, instead of only 40% of the time or less than 40% of the time where they would go with, yes, I embrace conflict. I can argue and still be friends. I can passionately argue and still be friends. That was only less than 40% of the time in low trust environment compared to 94% of the time in high trust environment. And overall, if I average everything, what I found was that in high trust environment, you are 71% more likely to hold a constructive disagreement than in low trust environment. If I break constructive disagreement down to its components, in my opinion, there are 3 components. One is vulnerability. Vulnerability, not necessarily in telling very personal things about yourself, as it is your willingness to ask stupid questions and not worry about what people are going to say about you. Your willingness to suggest stupid ideas and not worry that somebody in that meeting is going to go out and, tell others what kind of stupid questions or stupid ideas you bring to the table. And I'm going to get back to vulnerability pretty soon. So, the willingness to be vulnerable is 240% higher in my surveys, 240% higher in high trust environment than in low trust environment. So when somebody described a high trust environment, they also described willingness to be vulnerable 240% more. 106% more willing, more likely to give direct, unfiltered feedback. The kind of feedback the other person needs and not what you think they want to hear. And 76% higher receptivity to feedback, willingness to get this feedback and benefit from it, from feedback that's given to you. So, we're starting with creativity and productivity or performance, team performance. We realize that depends on the ability to hold constructive disagreement. Then we realize that depends on your willingness to be vulnerable, give feedback, and be receptive to feedback. And those all heavily depend on trust. I want to give you a scenario. Imagine that you're on a team with 4 other members. So you're a team of 5. You've known those members for a while, you get along, you had fights and you got over them, and you're at a level of trust that was built over a long period of time, and all the 6 components of trustworthiness are there. You think that they're competent, they think that you are competent, you have personality compatibility, which again doesn't mean that you're all the same, but you're all complementary to one another. The fairness and symmetry is there. The contributions to the interaction is positive, and it doesn't mean that you're just saying nice things, but there's no BS. Let's just leave it at that. And you feel that others care about you, you care about them. You spend a lot of time, high intimacy, which means a lot of it is face-to-face in person. So you trust the other 4 members of that team. Are you willing to be vulnerable with them? Well, I already told you that you're going to be 240% more likely, more willing to be vulnerable with them because you trust them. Now we're throwing in a new member. Somebody needs to fill a role. We have a vacancy. A new member joins the team. Do you trust them? Well, I can look at the 5th law of trust and say that trust is transferable. So if somebody who you trust told you that this is a good person to have on the team, then you trust them to some extent. I mean, how open are you going to be with them if you just met them for the first time? Really doesn't matter how much other people told you that this is a good person to have. You're still going to hold things back. You're not going to be willing to be as vulnerable or give that person enough feedback. And in one of the future episodes, I'm going to talk about the relationship between feedback, trust, and time, really. So, and how receptive are you going to be for feedback from them when you don't know them very well? And by the way, they're probably going to hold back until they feel more comfortable with you. So here's what happens. A new member comes in. Even if that member checks all the boxes and everything, you still, you don't trust them enough. You don't trust them as much as you will over a long period of time, if you knew them for a long period of time. So your trust in them is limited, and because of that, you're not willing to be as vulnerable, including with the other 4 members that are in the same room with you. So team dynamics of this team that just moved from being a team of 5 to a team of 6, the dynamics slowed down. The dynamics declined. We moved a little left. I'm not going to say that we moved right on that graph between that has on the x-axis has the level of conflict. I'm not saying we're going to move right and this is becoming personal, emotionally rational. No, but we're going to move to the left. So we're going to hold back. So the entire dynamic goes down if there is a team member that you don't trust enough. But here's the deal. The way I described it to you right now, I said that you don't trust them yet. I said that you don't trust them, even though somebody told you that this is a good member to have on the team, that they're really great and you're going to trust them. Trust me. But there could be other reasons why you don't trust them. You may not trust them for other reasons, and that is their behavior, what they do, the fact that they talk behind your back, the fact that they don't interact very well, the fact that they take everything personal, become emotionally irrational, they don't listen. Everything to them is a win-win, a zero-sum game and not win-win. So there are other reasons. There could be other reasons why you don't trust them, other than I just don't know them well enough to trust them. So we're back to this is exactly the same as Phelps' bad apple phenomenon, which is one member of the team can drag the entire dynamics of the team down. What should you do? When I ask what should you do, I'm making a big assumption, and that is that you are in a position to do something. So maybe you're the team leader, maybe you're a general manager, the CEO, the HR manager, but you're in a position to do something. And when I say something, this could be all the way to removing that new member or that least trusted member from that team. But before you do that, there is a prerequisite, and the prerequisite is before you address trust issues on the team, you have to be trusted by that team enough to make that decision or to address the trust issue. So you have to first work on yourself and make sure that you're not the team member that the others don't trust. You're not the team member that drags down team dynamics and performance. But let's assume that you are trusted and you are in a position to handle it. So the first question to ask is that team member not trusted by anyone on that team, or is it just a one-on-one situation? So this is where you do a kind of a matrix of trust, and you want to kind of get a sense of how every member of the team trusts all the other members of the team. And if that team member is not trusted by anyone, then you're going to see that they get very low scores, trustworthiness scores by everyone or almost everyone. Let's just say significantly lower than the average trustworthiness score of all the others. So I built a tool. It's still, I wouldn't even call it a beta. I'll call it an alpha. It's very preliminary. I call it Trust Tracker 360. You can find it on my website, yoramsolomon.com, under resources. So yoramsolomon.com/resources. You will see Trust Tracker 360 is one of them. If only one member has an issue with this other team member who's not trusted, so only one member doesn't trust it, it's a different way to handle it. That's you're going to have to take these two out and figure it out and then decide if this is something that's recoverable or it's not recoverable, but it's just between the two of them. And yes, it does have to go away, because otherwise you still have a performance problem on the team. For now, I'm going to assume that everybody has a problem with this team member. And we'll go to the first question. The first question is why? Why is that member not trusted by, and again, we're assuming by anybody else on that team? One reason would be that it's simply that this is a new member to the team. There was not enough time and intimacy with the team. Time and intimacy are the accelerators. So if you think about that, when you throw in a new member on the team, first there is the who they are, what do we know about them? And by the way, that's something that you should work on. When you introduce somebody to the team, don't just throw somebody on the team, but make sure that they know who they are, who that person is. Think about those components of competence, personality compatibility, and symmetry or fairness. So whatever you can throw in, symmetry and fairness, and I'll talk about that as the next bullet, but at least personality and compatibility is something that, maybe you run some personality test, their Myers-Briggs or anything else. Maybe when you introduce them to the team, first of all, do that in a meeting where they get to ask this new member questions. They get to ask the existing team members questions. They get to know each other. Then there is so this is kind of the baseline. The baseline is, what do we know about this new team member? And it's up to you to make sure that they know enough at the moment that you introduce this new team member to the team. Then there is what they do. And you can't control what they do during every interaction with the team, how they behave, the level of BS, the level of empathy. You can't control that. That's going to have significant impact on the trust or their trustworthiness. Time and intimacy, though, are the accelerators. So you can wait until enough time had passed and they start trusting this person. Or you can just address it, just increase the time and intimacy, force more meetings, longer meetings, force them to meet in person and not communicate over email especially when you don't know that the team member. There is a much higher probability of making wrong assumptions, misinterpreting, reading between the lines what's not there. So drive the team towards stronger time, longer time, more frequency of meetings, and higher intimacy. In asymmetry, there are things that are within your control and things that are not. So if there is some kind of an organizational asymmetry, this person is at a certain level while others are at a different level, there does tend to be, even not to a great extent, but to some extent, a limitation on how much you trust the member. That's especially if they're at a higher, I would even say a lower position than you are. If they're at a lower position, a lower job grade, you might look at them differently and trust them less because they're not, at your level. If they're at a higher level, you may not trust them because, you're worried about their contacts at higher management, and maybe you should think twice before you say something. if there's a compensation or what they get from the company. And it doesn't have to be compensation. It can be access to resources or other things. Again, you might not trust somebody who doesn't have enough. You might not trust somebody who has a lot more than you. The one that's not within your control is what do you do about asymmetry of contribution? What do you do when this member contributes much less than the other members? By the way, I would even worry about if they contribute dramatically more than the others, because you don't want to be the person that feels bad that one member works twice as hard as you do. So you're kind of distancing yourself a little from them, and you may even help isolate them from the team because they overwork. I mean, they make all of us look bad by how hard they work. So you really want to get to that point of having symmetry of contribution. So if that happens, if that other member works much less than the rest of the team, this is dramatically going to impact how much they don't trust that member. Or if they dramatically work harder than everybody else, then you may want to have a conversation with them and just tell them, try and stay within the same level of contribution that other members of the team are contributing. How about competence? What do you do if they're just not competent enough in what they do? Now, competence, I don't want you to confuse that with professionalism or their ability to do a specific task. Competence is made of a lot of different things. And, I'll remind you again that scene from the movie Zero Dark 30 when the Navy SEALs are sitting around this horseshoe game. They're playing horseshoes. One of the Navy SEALs asks another one on the team, do you really believe that we're going after bin Laden? And the other one says, yeah, I do. And the first one asks, what convinced you? And the second one points to Maya, the CIA agent, with both his hands and says, her confidence. So confidence, not overconfidence, confidence indicates competence. And that's only one example. There are a lot of examples that would indicate the other person is competent. What do you do if they're not? What do you do if the component that prevents the other members of the team from trusting this one is because they don't think that they're competent? Well, first, there is maybe it's a misconception and we need to clear it up. Maybe it's not a misconception. Maybe they are just not competent to the level the team needs them to be competent. So the first question here is going to be, can this be fixed? Is there any training? Is there any mentoring? Is there anything that you can do to get that member of the team to be competent enough? Because otherwise, they're just not competent enough. Now, I had an episode where I talked about Simon Sinek's whole visual of competence versus, or he calls it performance versus trust. And I'm not going to repeat that except for saying that competence is part of trust. It's not something that you balance against trust. Competence is part of trust, and you're not going to trust a pilot that doesn't know how to land a plane enough, or not good enough, not competent enough in landing a plane. You're not going to trust a Navy SEAL team sniper who can't hit anything from 300 yards or beyond, if he's the sniper. And you're not going to trust a surgeon that has a higher than average patient mortality rate. Those are all competency issues. So competence is important. Don't ignore it. If there is a competence issue, you need to fix it. If it's a perception issue, it's easier to fix. It's not a perception issue, could be fixed or not, but you have to address it. Okay, I touched on the what you do, 3 components, positivity, time, and intimacy. I touched on competence, I touched on symmetry, which leaves us with personality compatibility. So let's start with what if there's a moderate level of personality incompatibility? First thing is you need to understand it. I mean, this could be something relatively benign. Somebody's a procrastinator, the other person is not a procrastinator. How do we deal with that? So the first part is that you have to understand it. And again, if you take a tool like Trust Tracker 360 that's available freely on my website, at least at the time I recorded this episode, use a tool like this, do an assessment, and see what is the personality incompatibility. Or just forget using a tool. Just ask the team, what is it about the other person's personality, this team member's personality, that is incompatible with yours? Understand it. Once you understand, sometimes it's just a matter of understanding it that would help you resolve it. And, I'll take you through one of my stories. Again, when I worked in Texas Instruments, I remember that I used to go to my boss and suggest different ideas. And every time I would suggest something, I would start with the bottom line. Before I move on, I'm going to ask you, if I need to convince you with something, if I need you to make a decision and I need to convince you, would you rather me start with the bottom line first, or start with an explanation, take you through my thought process, and give you the bottom line next or last? And when I say with the bottom line first, I mean, I'm going to give you the bottom line and then I'm going to give you the rationale, but I'm going to start with the bottom line. So I went to my boss and I suggested something, and I started with bottom line first because, to me, I like, this is how I like to be told. I like to get the bottom line first because it gives me context. So if you're asking me for something, if you're trying to convince me with something, I need the context first. I need to know where you're going with this, and then tell me how you got there. That's how I work. By the way, I did a survey and I found that 74% of people prefer the bottom line first, just like me. Great, I mean the majority. 3 out of 4 people, but not 4 out of 4 people. 17% prefer that you start with the rationale, take me through your thought process, and only at the end tell me what the bottom line is. That was how my boss was. By the way, 9% don't care. So my boss was like the second type. 17% of population, 1 in 7 people, would like you to first take them through your thought process and only then at the end give them the bottom line and therefore. So every time I suggested something, it's like she developed an immediate allergic reaction to what I suggested. And it was really, really, really annoying. I can tell you that. It was annoying. And one day I just asked her, do you prefer, when I suggest something, when I'm asking you for something, do you prefer that I start with the bottom line, which is how I always do it, or do you prefer me to first take you through my thought process and only give you the bottom line at the end? She says, the latter. Take me through your thought process. Let me reach the same conclusion that you did at the same time. Because when you start with the bottom line, I can see many, many reasons why this is a wrong thing to ask. This was it. So here's an interesting thing. If you take one of the outcome of one of my surveys that said that 74% like the bottom line first, 17% like it last, 9% don't care. Overall, what I found was that 74.5% of people, 74.8%, I'm sorry, let's just say 75%, are okay. Either one of them doesn't care, or they're both the same. 75%. 25% are of combination of people are not okay. So you have 1 in 4 probability of not being compatible with the other person based on that little thing by itself. But here's the deal. As soon as I asked her and I realized that that's the issue. The issue is that she prefers me to take her through my thought process and give her the bottom line at the end, while I prefer to start with the bottom line because that's how I like to hear it, and then give her the rationale. That was an incompatibility. Once I realized that was an incompatibility, I changed how I talk to her. By the way, whenever you do one of those personality assessments, whether it's Myers-Briggs or DISC or Enneagram, which is my daughter Maya's preference, or any of the others, one of the things that comes out of it is when you realize that you're one type and the other person is the other type, one of the things they teach you is, and this is how you communicate to a person from that type. Maybe that's the issue. As long as you understand it, you assess it, you understand it, you can change how you behave. Or alternatively, you can just realize that you can live with it. Now I understand. It's not that the other person on our team is a bad person. I can understand. I can live with this. Maybe what you do is you change roles. The other person, Patrick Lencioni did something that's called the Working Genius study. Not study. Actually, I think that's also his new book. And he has those 6 types. And the types depend on really the time in the life cycle of a project. Some people are, for example, I took that test, that assessment, and I found that one of my working geniuses is being an inventor. I'm the person that comes up with ideas. And one of my working frustrations, I think, was I don't remember how he called it, but essentially it's the executioner, the person that actually executes. I'm not great at executing. I'm very good at coming up with ideas. Well, that's a different type. And maybe I am someone who is very good at execution, and you're putting me in a role that requires me to come up with ideas. Maybe I'm someone who's really great with coming up with ideas, which is me, and you're putting me in a role that requires me to be an executioner, and that's not my type. So maybe what you do, maybe the way to address it, now that you know what the issue is, what the incompatibility is, you change roles. So I refer to all of those as moderate personality incompatibility. And really the way to address that is first to know, to understand it, to realize. 2, to either change how we behave in a way, that's not too hard. It wasn't that hard for me to, every time I would talk to my boss, I would just take her through my thought process and give her the bottom line at the end. Didn't require too much of me, really, other than be aware of this is how I communicate with her, while with others I would communicate in a different way. Not too big a deal, or change roles, so have a different role in the project. So those are all moderate personality incompatibilities that can be addressed. You can fix that. You can fix the level of trust in the team, even due to personality incompatibility, as long as it's moderate, as I described here. But what if it's not moderate? What if this is a significant personality incompatibility? And I'm going to take it another step, and that's it's a significant value incompatibility. We don't share values, or I would say we have opposite values on something. And by the way, this might even be something that's completely unrelated from work or unrelated to work, such as political positions. I mean, you would have to argue, what does my political position have to do with what I do at work? We got to a point where our culture has embraced such a political divisiveness, a political polarization, that this gets into work. And there was a study, and I don't remember the numbers, but the political polarization is starting to get a stronger foothold at the workplace and affect work. So I'm not assuming that this is, we just don't know what the other person's values are. I'm talking about we know that there is a value incompatibility. When I did one of my first studies on trust, I tried to correlate the different components. This is, by the way, how I ended up with those 6 components, because those were the six groups of components that really correlated with trust independently. It's called factor analysis in statistics. And one of them I called shared values. That one had the highest correlation with the level of trust, 86%. 86% correlation between shared values and trust. What do you do if there is a very strong, not moderate personality incompatibility, a strong personality incompatibility, specifically focused on values that are opposite, important enough to the different people to the point where they just don't trust this other person? There's only one thing that you have to do. You have to remove someone from the team. And if everybody on the team, remember, that's how we started the analysis. If everybody on the team does not trust this member, you have to remove this member from the team. Let's talk about the dreaded decision. Why do I call it the dreaded decision? Because the decision to remove someone from a team or from the company is a hard decision to make. First of all, it's uncomfortable. It's awkward. I mean, people depend on their jobs and now you're removing them. Even if you only remove them from the team and you keep them in another position in the company, they don't feel good about it. Maybe it's for their benefit, but they don't feel good about that. Maybe and not to mention that when they don't feel good about it, you don't feel good about it. Did you ever fire someone? Did you ever remove someone from a team? It's not an easy decision to make. It's awkward. In so many cases, what we prefer to do is just kick the can down the road, let somebody else deal with that. I'll move on. Maybe the reason you're not doing it is because you're afraid of the legal liability that comes with it. Because, guess what? We're a very litigious society now. When I did my 2018 TED Talk, I talked about the fact that 1.7%, over $300 billion a year, 1.7% of our GDP, more than $300 billion a year, and I'm just talking about the US, is spent on civil litigation. Well, it's only 4 years later, and now it's 2.3% and more than $400 billion. 2.3% of our GDP is spent on civil litigation. This is only going to go higher. We're not making decisions like removing somebody from the team or from the company because we're afraid of the legal liability. And you know what? It is an earthquake to the team itself. It is. When you remove a member, even if it's a member, well, obviously it's a much, much smaller earthquake, much lower on the Richter scale, if that is a team member that nobody on the team trusted, but it still is an earthquake. So it's an earthquake to the team. So I understand. I understand why this is a hard decision. I understand why you're trying to avoid that decision. But I want you to know one thing. You are weighing the team performance against this awkward, uncomfortable feeling of removing a member of the team. After you've gone through everything I told you, I gave you plenty of opportunities to identify reasons why this team member is not trusted as much as maybe they should, that can be fixed. We talked about increasing time and intimacy. We talked about moderate personality incompatibilities, understanding them, resolving them. We talked about symmetry. But when it comes to significant value incompatibility that just cannot be overcome, cannot be resolved, you are weighing the performance of the team. You're going to have a team that performs with low trust. And I already told you what the outcome of that is. I only told you some of the outcome, because low trust also affects the engagement, the level of stress, job satisfaction, willingness of other members of the team to stay with the company. it affects many, many things. It affects 45%. So one of the studies that I found says that when you have high trust, projects will end up on time, on budget, and as required 45% of the time more. You're affecting all of that because you have to make this decision that you really dread. And I understand why you dread that. But I want you to consider one more thing. If you are keeping that member who's not trusted with the team, you are not doing them any favor, because they are in an environment where people don't trust them. They will be affected by it as well. So if there's one last thing that I want you to remember is not only that when you don't make that decision, when you keep an untrusted team member on the team, not only that you're compromising the team performance because of your own, I don't know if I should go as far as say selfishness, because you want to avoid something that's uncomfortable, awkward, or liability or whatever. But I want you to remember that you're not doing them a favor by keeping them on the team. What would you like to know about trust and trustworthiness? Let me know and I'll answer it in a future episode. I would love to hear from you. Email me at yoram@thetrustshow.com. If you like this episode, subscribe to the show so you will automatically get notified when I release a new episode. Rate it. Write a review for this podcast, because those ratings help not only you, but also others looking for podcasts just like this. If you're looking for more resources to learn about how to build trust, be trusted, or know who to trust, look up my workshops, online courses, books, or go to my website, trusthabits.com. And remember that the answer to these two questions will have the biggest impact on your personal and professional success or failure. Can I trust you, and can you trust me? Thank you for listening or watching The Trust Show.